This is Volusia Today, a public information radio program brought to you by the County of Volusia.
Too easy. Good morning. Actually, Clayton, before we begin, I have to tell you, I was talking to our friend Sheldon Gardner last night at the Journal, and I said, oh yeah, we have a radio show tomorrow morning, and she said, oh, you mean Volusia County's one and only trusted source for local news?
Good.
No. She's a reporter, bro. She busted us for claiming to be.
Oh, I thought you about from the governor's standpoint. Hey, Sheldon, we know you're out there listening, so good.
So we're gonna change it up a little bit today. Yeah. Who knew Sheldon listened, right? So we'll change it up today. Good morning, Volusia County. You are listening to Volusia Today. My name is Michael, and you are listening to Volusia County's one and only trusted source for local news.
That was for you, Sheldon.
Other than Sheldon Gardner. You should read Sheldon's stories too. She gets it right
yes,
a lot of the time. Most of the time. And thank you for listening, Sheldon, you and my mom. We have three very, very special guests with us today. You know, normally we'll start with a little bit of news and talk about what's going on, but considering we're still in the recovery phase for Hurricane Milton, I'd like to go just straight into that and spend the rest of the show talking about that.
Let's go for it.
Okay. So we have three very special guests today. We have Clint Mecham. Clint, I think that's the first time I've ever gotten your name right.
Thank you for that.
Yes, it took me a year. We have Clint Mecham, Emergency Management Director.
Yes,
is that right?
Correct.
And we have Chief King. Thank you for being with us today, Chief King, Fire Rescue. And Ben Bartlett. Gentlemen, we appreciate you being here. I don't want you to think that we value your time any less, but getting Ben out of bed before 9 this morning was a big deal. We appreciate you being here, Ben Bartlett, Public Works Director.
Good to be here.
Yes, responsible for all things debris. We'll get to you in a minute. Clint, let's go right into the hurricane. Tell us a little bit about, just give us like a 1 or 2 minute summary. Hurricane Milton, what was its impacts? What did it do to Volusia County?
So, as everybody knows, Milton came ashore as a Category 3 on the west side of the state. As it progressed over the Sarasota and Tampa area, Siesta Key is where it came ashore. It downgraded itself a little bit, but as it approached Volusia County, as it crossed us and then crossed out into the Atlantic, it maintained a Category 1 classification throughout. So we saw some pretty significant impacts. We saw the highest official reported sustained wind was 62 miles an hour, which is just under the Category 1, but our gusts were repetitive and frequent. And the highest recorded wind gust was 87 miles an hour. So on top of that, in some locations we got in excess of 15 inches of rain added to the rain that we had seen the previous 2 weeks. So very significant impacts. And as the storm exited, we got some storm surge coming in. It affected the beaches. So all across the county, every location across the county was affected in some way.
So tell me about, we knew the storm was coming. Actually, it kind of came out of nowhere. If I remember right, on Friday, we were kind of keeping an eye on it, but it wasn't much. Saturday afternoon, all of a sudden,
it's like
it was a big thing that was headed our way.
It was. We've been in constant contact with our FDEM partners in Tallahassee and the National Weather Service in Melbourne, the 4th, the 5th, and everybody's kind of keeping an eye on it, but not sure. But it really started rolling late on the 5th, early on the 6th, and the emergency management staff, as well as our first responders and our public works and public utilities folks, we really started paying attention over the weekend and then early into the week as we're like, we're going to take a hit.
Yeah. Help me understand the decision to do shelters and evacuations.
Sure.
I apologize.
So again, in looking at the impacts and what the National Weather Service was telling us, this was a strange storm in that normally it's the upper right quadrant that gets the majority of the impact. Well, the upper right quadrant this time as it crossed the state would have been to the south of us. But this time the convection put all of the effects, or a lot of the effects, on the left side of the storm, the upper left quadrant, and that's where we happen to be. So taking the lessons learned from like Ian and Nicole, for example, we knew based on what the Weather Service was telling us, we were going to see these significant impacts. So that's when we made the decision to go ahead and in conjunction with the Sheriff's Office, issue those evacuation orders for what we call Zone A, which is primarily our barrier islands, and then those areas that were known to have experienced impacts from Ian and Nicole.
Okay. So the majority of the impact, we saw some wind, but the majority of the impact for us was rain and the subsequent flooding that came from that. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. And we did get wind effect. And unfortunately, we could probably attribute our 2 deaths with 2 of our 4 deaths from the storm with wind effect because of the trees going through their roofs. That was probably more wind than rain, but widespread throughout the county. And what we're still continuing to deal with, and Ben's people especially are continuing to deal with, are those rain effects and the debris. So,
the speed of the wind, like what was the wind speeds again?
So 62 is what they recorded at the airport as the official high-end wind speed, and then we saw an official gust up in or at Ponce at 87 miles an hour.
Because, obviously I was at the EOC with you guys, so, I didn't get the full, hearing what was going outside, but whenever I went home, my family and even the neighborhoods, we were all talking, and they said that the winds were scaring them to death. They said they've heard things like that. And I was like, guys, like that was what, like a Cat 1 strength, like winds?
Category 1,
And I said, just think what those people on the west side of the state, what they experience, Cat 2, Cat 3 force. So that's like, I know there's a lot of rain, but like my family, they're all talking about like how scared they were of just the wind out there.
Yeah, mine too.
Absolutely. I mean, the wind gusts we experienced, 87, 88 miles an hour. The sustained winds when the storm came ashore over Siesta Key were clocked at 105 miles an hour, sustained with gusts higher
It's
than
almost double like what we had here.
Exactly.
So I was telling us, like, just think, could you imagine, what they were like if we, heaven forbid, ever have to go through something like a 2, 3, or, even higher.
Exactly.
So Clint, I don't want to dig too deep into the flooding because that's a whole entire show in and of itself. But where did we see the flooding and how we understand why? I know, like you already mentioned, we were already saturated before this thing even popped up.
We were. We had experienced anywhere from 2 to almost 10 inches of rain the 2 weeks preceding the storm, and then during the storm we saw. Again, official numbers from the National Weather Service, we saw anywhere from 7 to almost 16 inches of rain during the 2 days of the storm. And I'm sure there are locations across the county that received even more than that. That's just the official numbers we got from the National Weather Service and their rain gauges. So the areas that we saw that were the most heavily impacted were the Deltona, Orange City, DeLand area, and then again, South Daytona, Port Orange, and Daytona Beach, primarily the Midtown area and Daytona Beach, were the ones that seemed to be the most heavily impacted by the rain.
How much is out there still today?
There's still significant water out there right now, and Ben and his folks will be are doing their absolute best to make sure that the impact is lessened. But once it's Florida, we're not that high above sea level, so once we get water on the ground, and again with the ground being as saturated as it is, it can be pretty insidious. It's got no place to go. So,
Clint, I was trying to explain the term 100-year storm to my wife, and I'm a writer. I don't know much about anything. So help me, and I think she maybe listens on occasion. Help me out. How do I explain that to somebody?
So, I mean, Ben described it the best during county council the other night. So I'll defer to Ben.
Ben's a little shy.
So you hear these words thrown around a lot: 100-year storm event, 500-year storm event, 25-year storm event. So what those are is they're really percentages of a chance of that storm occurring in a given year. So a 100-year storm event is really a way of saying that's a 1% chance you're going to get that type of event. And really, there's different durations of those events. You can have a 100-year 24-hour event, 100-year 72-hour event. So
you don't hear that very often.
Yeah.
That's
right. So a lot of times what we focus on is the 100-year 24-hour storm event. So the amount of rain, there's a 1% chance you're going to get this amount of rain over a 24-hour period. So for our area, roughly that's 11 inches of rain. Yep. So every year there's a 1% chance that you're going to get an 11-inch rainstorm over a 24-hour period. That's the 100-year storm event. And 500 years more than that. And what I would say is this storm event, what we've experienced on the east side was slightly less than what we saw during Ian because of the fact that we didn't have the tidal conditions. We didn't have the full moon and the king tide that really stopped everything from draining out and really prolonged the water for staying in for so long. But it was still devastating in terms of the fact that we got that much rain on the east side. On the west side, what you're looking at in terms of the amount of rain we got is very similar to a Tropical Storm Faye event in 2008, where we got more than a 100-year rain event. And in the west side, unfortunately, it's a series of what we call closed basins where there's no natural outfall by gravity for the water to flow to the river or to other places.
The bottom of the basin is the lowest point.
Correct. So these bowls fill up. You get all this rain, and Clint mentioned it. We had a lot of rain in advance of the storm. The bowls were already partially full, and then you get this rainstorm, a lot of rain in a 24-hour period, and those bowls fill up. They fill up, and then they go into other bowls, and that's what you're seeing in DeBerry, Orange City, Deltona, DeLand. Is those closed basins have filled up, and what we're working to do is we're working with our local partners, we're working with the state and everybody to really try to get and move this water around safely, so you're not impacting people downstream, you're not causing flooding by pumping water in other locations. So that's what we're working on right now.
It may have been you. Somebody told me in the EOC last week that, see if I get this right, that this was the rain. Milton brought the rain of Ian and the winds of Hurricane Matthew. Is that a fair assumption for a layman?
Again, it was close to the rain levels of Ian. Ian, I think, brought actually higher totals and stuff like that. Matthew, the wind was probably comparable. But so it's a good general comparison. But each one of these storms, as Ben said, each one of these storms has the potential to be a 100 or a 500-year storm. Right. It's not that we get one every 100 years and we're done. Each storm has that potential. So it's kind of like playing the lottery, right? The more you play, your odds don't get better at getting the winning numbers. The odds are the same every time you make a draw. So each time we get a storm, the odds are it can be a 100 or a 500 year, just like the previous one.
Yeah, I think that's what's hard to grasp about 100 years. So you think you're only going to see it once. I saw it. I'm not going to live another 100 years, so I won't see another one. Right. It's kind of the easy way to assume what that means. Yeah. Pardon me. We talked a little bit about the evacuations. Chief, can you tell us a little bit about your department and fire rescue and what you guys did during the preparation for the storm, during the storm, and then recovery?
Okay, so like every other storm, we were talking, this one snuck in on us a little bit. So over the weekend, we were having some conversations, and at that point, we're looking across at what resources we might need going into a storm. But we talk a lot about Ian here, and my first big storm here in Volusia County dealing with it was Ian. Similar water rescues and stuff like that. So what we did different this time, prior to this storm, when Helena came through, we had put our resources together with the sheriff's office. We deployed to Taylor County, started more of that force multiplier. So this was really the first storm that we had the opportunity to building all these resources together. And I feel when Milton came in, we had way more resources available for the entire county, help out all the municipalities, to assist with them. So I think with this storm, just that portion of it, the amount of water that we were dealing with during the storm, possibilities of running calls during storms, because that's our biggest problem when these storms come through. First thing we're doing is cutting off the barrier island when we got to shut down the bridges at 39 plus miles an hour. Right. So that kind of stops us from being able to respond to the barrier island side of so that's part of the reason why I think we look at evacuations, especially in that area. Secondly, we get to a point where I think in this storm, we had several hours that we couldn't run medical calls or really any calls east of Nova Road, because we were seeing a lot of high winds. So it was emergency operations were shut down for several hours just because of that. What we did this time, we put in place with the sheriff's office, there was 2 Bearcats, and we had crews on that truck. So we had ALS Bearcats available to run to if we had really life critical calls during the hurricane, which we didn't have to deal with any. I mean, there was a couple of instances where we got out to try and save people, but that's kind of the difference from this storm. I mean, that's what we look for.
Chief, I drive a prissy little SUV. You're going to tell me understand what a Bearcat is.
It's pretty much like a little armored vehicle. I mean, this thing, you can't blow it over. It's a wider wheelbase. I mean, if the back opens up, you can fit a whole SWAT team in it. So it's a wheelbase. It'll go through water. It's a little higher vehicle.
Before the hurricane, not just here, but in lots of places, you always hear people in the press conferences, fire rescue, law enforcement, whoever it is, saying, here's why you need to evacuate, because there may come a point in time where we can't get to you. And I think there's always an assumption that you guys are always going to be there for us, right? Like the general, I certainly assume that if I dial 911, somebody's going to be there in about 3 minutes. And in the middle of that hurricane, that's not the case, right?
Most of the
time.
I
yeah.
mean, if it's, I've seen in all my years of doing this, other places I've been, there's always that one or two calls that comes up. We're going to figure out how to get there, but the problem is the amount of calls that come in. I mean, people that don't heed the warning and evacuate, and all of a sudden they have a medical emergency, or they're just scared and they're calling 911. Those are the ones that it's hard for us, but we got to make the decision. We can't respond. But there's times that, we're putting ourselves in more danger when people could have just evacuated and not put us in that danger.
Yeah, and I
so
think
there's that tough situation.
And I think people, our community, really did prepare and take the storm seriously. Like, we had just a little bit over 1,000 people in the shelters, and the sheer amount of sandbags that were given out, not just through the county, but our municipal partners, was nothing short of extraordinary.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't have the actual comparisons, but pretty close. The call load during the storm this time was half of what it was in Ian. The calls that were coming in.
Well, so then that makes me to believe kind of what Clayton said. Yeah. That's. I tell you what. Let's take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about what happens now.
Subscribe to the Volusia County YouTube channel.
And hit the bell icon to know what's happening in your hometown.
There are so many great places to explore.
And things to learn.
With over 1,000 videos available right now, the channel offers something for everyone.
Let's go!
Did you know we have countless features showcasing history, nature, wildlife, and recreation? Subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Or that we live stream important county meetings and workshops where leaders make decisions that can impact our everyday lives. Did you subscribe yet?
Or that we record our weekly radio show, Volusia Today, where we interview staff from the different divisions and departments across our great county, and they discuss the nitty-gritty of their field and expertise.
Go ahead, subscribe.
But that's not it. There's more. Subscribe and hit the bell icon and fully explore.
Score!
Welcome back, everyone. This is Clayton Jackson with Volusia Today. We're talking all things Hurricane Milton and our ongoing recovery efforts. And so, Clint, just want to ask, a lot of people are calling, after the storm, there's widespread power outages throughout the county, Duke, FPL, Clay, New Smyrna Utilities. So kind of give our listeners an update on where we are at as far as power outages.
Sure. So at the height, we had reported from our four power utility companies in excess of 234,000 customers without power. So that's not people, that's individual locations, right? Households, et cetera, et cetera. Earlier this week, we hit our benchmark of being 95% restored, and now, in looking at the numbers that are being reported by Duke and FP&L, for example, they're actually on par with what an average day in Volusia County would be. So we are about as back to normal as we can be for power restoration. And again, all four of our power utility companies, they did a phenomenal job, a truly outstanding job getting the power back on.
And before we move on, speaking of power, like Chief King and I were talking a bit earlier, I saw some reports in the news about people when their electricity comes on, their house catches on fire. Just real brief, give an explanation of what happens and what people can do to prevent that.
Okay. Well, on top of that, that's another part of a storm that, we keep some extra resources. We're prepared because we know when that power starts coming back on, we could deal with houses that may have had some water intrusion or something, or some damage that can turn into being a fire. And I think we had post-storm, from the end of the storm till a day and a half, we had 4 structure fires that just the county alone was on, not in the whole county. So we talk about it all the time, especially when your power goes off. You could be doing stuff in your house. So, make sure when the power's off, you go around and check everything. But most of all, if you're evacuating, go ahead and turn your power off, because you might not be home when your power comes back on. So a good thing is to just, either double check if you're home, make sure all your stuff are off, but turn that power off if you're not going to be there, if you're going to evacuate.
Because you leave, like you said, curling iron on, something like that, and you get up and go to the shelter, and if you're not home and that power flicks back on, that could spark something.
Yes. The easy answer is just go to your garage, turn off the main breaker, and evacuate.
That's great advice. But so now the water's starting to recede. The electricity's back on. I've salvaged whatever food I had left, but now, Ben, my yard has a bunch of what you call vegetative debris in it. What do I do with it?
Well, this is something we've been through, unfortunately, quite a few times before, and I think a lot of our residents have gotten used to this process. But basically, we've begun mass debris operations, which basically means we're coming around with those big trucks with the claws to pick up debris. But there's different kinds of debris. There's not just vegetative debris. That's a lot of what we see out there, the piles of trees and things like that. But there's also what we call construction and demolition debris. So if your fence came down or you had, some flooding and you put some drywall out, that's considered C&D debris. You can have white goods, which is appliances. That's a separate type of debris. And then, so what we ask is that you place that material out at the curb. Don't block the roadway. Try not to block the sidewalks. Definitely don't block the drainage inlets and the storm drains. Place that material out at your curb. Keep it separate. Do not bag up the vegetative debris because they won't be picked up. These are all FEMA regulations, so I can't stress this enough. We have some graphics that your team puts out through social media that kind of shows everybody what to do. But if you combine your debris or you put it in bags, it's not going to get picked up. And so we urge people to really follow the rules on that and try to be as mindful of those as possible so we can come through and get your debris. The county's opening a series of citizen drop-off locations because I'm going to be honest with everybody, given the storm Helene situation that hit prior to Milton and the debris operations going on in parts of Florida as well as Georgia and North Carolina. And then with Milton, basically cutting a swath through the I-4 corridor, there is a lot of debris, a lot of demand on debris resources right now. And so we're working really hard with our contractor to try to get as many of those resources as possible. We're going to be mobilizing our road and bridge staff to pick up debris as well, and we're going to try to get it up off the ground as fast as possible. But it's a strained situation throughout the Southeast. So if you can work with your neighbor and get your debris and load it up, you can bring it to one of these citizen drop-off sites free of charge. Drop it off. You'll need to bring your driver's license or proof of ID to show that you are, in fact, a Volusia County resident. We currently have 2 of those sites running right now at the Tomoka landfill at 1990 Tomoka Farms Road, and in the old Plymouth landfill in DeLand out on Plymouth Road west of DeLand. And we're going to open up multiple sites. We're working with our cities to open up sites there, and we're going to try to encourage folks as much as possible to bring us their debris. If you don't want it sitting around tearing up your grass and you're getting tired of looking at those piles, load it up and bring it to us, and we'll take care of it, and it'll be that much faster that we get it picked up.
And I didn't want to get Ben off his game, but when you put your trash out, because he was on a roll, don't put it in front of the fire hydrant either.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
100%.
Minor detail.
100%.
I thought you were going to say that one.
That is one of the other ones.
Chief caught that one.
Right.
Yeah, fire hydrants, storm drains. Try not to block sidewalks because kids are walking to school and things like that, and try not to put it in the road as best you can.
Right.
So what if somebody did bag their debris before they really knew what's going on? Should they go out and unbag it right now?
You're just going to drive right past it.
Well, so, I can speak for the unincorporated areas of the county. We do pick up yard waste on a regular basis. You have a yard waste day where you can pick up, and there's up to 4 cubic yards will be picked up by your waste hauler. So you can do that. And I know the cities have similar. If you live in a city, consult your city's solid waste folks and see what the rules are for their yard waste. So you can definitely do that. And you can always bag, but if you want it picked up by the debris trucks in a pile, don't bag it. Make sure it's unbagged.
And y'all have also opened up a hotline where if any residents have any questions about, I live here, or I've had, this is my situation, what do I do? Like, there's a hotline that people can call right now.
Absolutely. So if you got any questions about debris, specifically if you live in the unincorporated areas, phone number is 1-833-843-2985. That's 833-843-2985. All this information's on our website, volusia.org. But yeah, you can call those folks and get information on the citizen drop-offs, the hours, and all that stuff. And if you have any questions about debris, they'll be able to answer it.
Clint, for the last minute or two, let's talk about Hurricane Milton has come and gone. and still debris. We're still dealing with some flooding, some impacts and stuff like that. Talk real quick about the St. Johns River and what we need to prepare for there.
So the St. Johns, as Ben indicated earlier, these are closed basins, and we're going to continue to get drainage into the St. Johns River probably through the first week of November. So what the National Weather Service is telling us is we're going to be in moderate to major flood stage pretty much all along our western border along the St. Johns, again, through that time period. So while Milton's gone, we still got impacts coming from the St. Johns.
Right.
So everybody needs to pay attention, especially if you live on the west side of the county in those areas.
So Clinton, you got the last minute or so. It's probably not the last one. We may see another hurricane. We may see another one this season, right?
Absolutely, we could.
What do I need to do? What did I learn out of this storm? What do I need to do to prepare for the next one?
The biggest things are understand what your vulnerabilities are. Again, I applaud all of our citizens for taking this one as seriously as they did, as Chief King indicated. But just lessons learned. Don't forget. Don't get complacent. Keep our foot on the accelerator, so to speak. Understand what your options are for assistance, whether it be from FEMA, the state, or locally. And always remember, we have a fantastic team here in Volusia County with our state partners and our federal partners. We're always here to help. So let us know if we can.
Don't drive through flooded roads.
Don't drive through flooded roads.
Yeah,
please don't drive through flooded roads. Yes, absolutely.
And don't play in the flood water. Don't
play
swim in it.
water.
Don't get in it.
Nasty stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So there was a storm out there we were watching for a minute. That is this still out there? I've not seen it.
There's two of them currently still out there.
Aren't you full of good news?
Yeah, just anything I can do to make everybody's Friday better. And anyway, both of them I have a low expectation right now of turning into anything major. So we're going to keep an eye on it and stuff like that. But we tell everybody stay on the news. There's always a possibility Mother Nature could throw a curve at us. But right now we're not overly concerned about the two that are currently out there.
All right, Clayton, why don't you get us out of here?
Well, Clint, real quick, I could throw it back to you, but there are some FEMA representatives that are actually going through some neighborhoods. So
Correct.
we just kind of tell us a little bit quick about that.
So we do have what we call DSA teams or damage survey assistance teams out there with FEMA. We've been sending them to the areas that we know to be the most highly hit. They're helping people register for assistance, but there's multiple ways people can register.
All right. With that, if you want more information, check out our website, www.volusia.org. Have a nice weekend.